You ever have a moment so raw, so unreal, that your whole body forgets how to breathe? There I was, standing under golden rooftop lights at Melissa's company event, some upscale launch party with chilled Prosecco, and people pretending they weren't checking LinkedIn under the table. I was just the supportive husband tonight, buttoned up, smiling on cue. And then I saw it. My wife, Melissa, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not with me. Not at home. That laugh, soft and tilted, the one she used to give me across the kitchen table when we were still us. But tonight, it belonged to someone else. Chad Winters, her coworker, Mr. Rolex and receding morals. He had one arm looped around her waist during a group toast, his mouth close enough to her ear that it looked like he was whispering ownership. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She leaned in, smiling like he'd just promised her forever. I walked straight through the crowd. I didn't run. I didn't yell. I just got close enough to hear Chad say, "To late nights and early flights," before their glasses clinked. "Interesting toast," I said, cutting through the air like a blade. Melissa turned, startled. "Brian, what are you?" I didn't let her finish. "What the hell is this?" Chad had the audacity to grin. "Whoa, relax, man. It's a party." I stepped in closer. "Then keep your hands off my wife." Melissa moved between us. "Brian, stop. You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said, locking eyes with her. "You're embarrassing me. You think this is normal?" "It was just a toast," she snapped, her voice going sharp, defensive. "He's my coworker. He's not touching your PowerPoint, Melissa. He's wrapped around you like you're his plus one." Her jaw clenched. "This isn't the place for your jealousy." "I'm not jealous," I said coldly. "I'm not confused, either." "That's worse, isn't it?" And then I did it. Shoved Chad hard enough that he stumbled backward into a metal drink stand, knocking over bottles and drawing gasps like we were the halftime show. Security jumped in instantly, arms up, ushering me back like I was the one who brought the chaos. Maybe I did, but I looked at her one last time. My wife, smoothing her dress, not checking if I was okay, not saying a word, just looking at me like I was the mess. So I gave her the line she wasn't expecting. Not a threat, just a truth she'd never outrun. "You just told the whole world who you are. Hope you like the view." They pulled me toward the elevator. I didn't resist. But Melissa, she never moved. Back on the street, cold air slicing through my jacket, I finally exhaled. Melissa was still up on that rooftop with Chad, sipping stolen moments. And me? I was done pretending the cracks weren't there. For the past 7 years, I thought love looked like loyalty, support, showing up to rooftop parties in clothes I hated, clapping for awards I couldn't spell. But that wasn't love to her. Not anymore. So here's where it starts. I'm Brian. And tonight, something broke for good. Not just trust. Me. The silence between us had weight. We'd barely spoken since the rooftop incident. The car ride home had been a funeral march. Only instead of grief, it was thick with denial and something colder than rage, detachment. Melissa didn't cry. She didn't explain. She didn't even glance my way as we stepped into our spotless Oak Ridge home. The kind of place with perfect backsplash, curated throw pillows, and now, a rot rotting quietly beneath the tile. She headed straight for the kitchen, heels clicking like nothing had happened. I stood by the door for a second, letting the quiet wrap around me. Then I followed. She was at the fridge, pouring herself a glass of Chardonnay like it was a Tuesday night, and not the evening her husband nearly came to blows over her flirtation. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You gonna tell me how long this thing with Chad's been going on?" She didn't look up, just took a sip. "There is no thing. You lost your mind tonight. That's what happened." "Really?" I nodded slowly. Because from where I stood, it looked like you two were one toast away from booking a honeymoon suite. She turned, her voice flat. "It was a hug. A toast. That's it." "Then why didn't you pull away?" Melissa narrowed her eyes. "Because I didn't think I had to defend a friendly moment at a work event." "You didn't look friendly," I shot back. "You looked intimate. And I'm not the only one who saw it. Half your coworkers filmed the damn thing." That landed. Her lips tightened. "You humiliated me," she whispered, quieter now. "In front of everyone. Do you have any idea how that looked?" "Oh, I know exactly how it looked," I said. "It looked like a husband watching his wife cling to another man while pretending nothing was wrong." She shook her head, disgusted. "God, you sound insecure." I stepped closer, voice low. "And you sound like someone who's been rehearsing excuses." Her eyes flared. You don't trust me anymore. That's the real problem. No, I said, nearly laughing. The real problem is you stopped acting like you had anything to lose. We stood there, two people who once fell in love over overpriced coffee and lazy Sunday mornings, now squaring off in our designer kitchen like strangers wearing wedding rings. She set her wine down hard. I work with Chad every day. We travel together. We're on the same projects. This is my job, Brian, not some affair. But that didn't stop you from leaning into him like he was your safety net, I said, voice quieter but sharper. You didn't look uncomfortable. You looked home. Melissa's shoulders stiffened. So what now? You want me to quit? Apologize for a toast? Burn down my career because your ego got bruised? No, I replied, reaching for my own untouched glass on the island. I want honesty. I want to know if I'm sleeping next to a woman who's already mentally moved out. The words hung in the air like smoke. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked away, not storming out, not shouting, just leaving. Her glass still sat on the counter, beads of condensation trailing down the stem like the sweat of a truth neither of us could say out loud. I stood alone in that too-perfect kitchen, staring at my untouched drink, feeling like I was watching a house burn in slow motion. She thought this was about a party. It wasn't. This was about erosion, the kind you don't see until your foundation's gone. And me? I wasn't ready to walk out. Not yet, but I was done standing still. For the next few days, the house settled into a strange rhythm, like we were roommates politely avoiding each other in a shared Airbnb. Melissa wasn't trying to explain herself anymore, and I wasn't asking. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I'd stopped believing her answers would mean anything. So I watched. Not obviously. I didn't snoop through her drawers or trail her car like some bad movie cliché. I just paid attention. Noticed things. Noticed her. Monday night. She came home after 9. Makeup still fresh. Laughter still clinging to her voice like a perfume she hadn't bought for me in years. Traffic, she said, slipping out of her heels. Client dinner ran late. She kissed my cheek in passing. Too quick to mean anything. Tuesday, it was presentation ran over. Wednesday, she claimed she was stuck in an Uber outage. Odd thing was, the Uber app on our shared account didn't show a single ride. She never noticed that I'd started keeping notes. Not digitally, nothing traceable. Just a slim, black notepad tucked behind a row of untouched cookbooks. Every late arrival. Every excuse. Every vague, team thing that didn't quite add up. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was observant. Focused. Cold, even. And the strangest part? That detachment made it easier to breathe. Each lie she told came with a little less effort. Less eye contact. Fewer details. She used to spin stories like she cared whether I believed them. Now she didn't bother polishing them at all. And that told me something even scarier. This wasn't new. It wasn't a fling starting to bloom. It was a fire that had already been burning, and I was just now smelling the smoke. Thursday evening, she came in with a thin layer of sweat on her neck and a smug little smile. Spin class ran late, she said, grabbing a water bottle. Which studio? I asked casual. She blinked, then shrugged. Same one as always. I nodded, pretended to go back to chopping vegetables. Melissa had never taken a spin class in her life. Later that night, she left her phone charging on the windowsill, something she never did. A year ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But now, that open phone felt more like bait than a slip-up. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already knew. This wasn't about proof anymore. It was about preparation. That night, as she snored softly beside me, too quickly, too deeply for someone so stressed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly overhead. That's when I made a decision. If Melissa was going to keep playing her part, I was going to play mine too. But not as the victim. Not anymore. I started mapping her behavior like a chessboard, timing her routines, checking her shared calendar against public work events, noticing when her perfume changed, when her gym bag had creases from actual use, and when it didn't. And every note I took, every tiny clue I gathered, chipped away at the man I used to be. Not because I didn't love her, but because the version of her I loved didn't exist anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she never did. Friday started like any other. Emails. Coffee. A quick video call with a client who insisted on using too many buzzwords. I left the office around 4 p.m., tired but calm. I had no plans for the evening, which felt strange, Melissa had another strategy session at the office and told me not to wait up. I didn't argue. I just nodded, then turned left at the intersection near my building instead of right, drawn by something I hadn't expected, a figure leaning against a pillar near the parking garage. She wore sunglasses even though the sun was low and fading. A slim tan coat, like she'd dressed for the chill but hadn't actually felt it. Her posture was casual, but there was tension in the way her arms folded, like someone gathering strength. She stepped forward before I reached my car. "Brian, right?" I stopped. "Yeah." She pulled the sunglasses off slowly. And just like that, her eyes gave her away, red-rimmed, swollen. Eyes that had been crying more than sleeping. "I'm Rachel," she said, barely above a whisper. "Chad's wife." The world didn't spin. It didn't explode. It just stopped for a second. "I think we need to talk," she added, and before I could respond, she turned and began walking toward the cafe across the street. I followed. We sat at a small wooden table by the window. No one around us seemed to notice that the air between us was suffocatingly heavy. Rachel held her coffee between both hands like it was something to anchor her. She didn't look up for a long time. Then she said it. "I think they're sleeping together." I didn't flinch. I didn't ask who she meant, because I already knew. "They started coming home later around the same time," she continued, her voice trembling but steady. "Chad's always been slippery, charming, but this is different. He's never been this consistent with his lies." I nodded slowly, my throat dry. "Melissa's been off too. Late nights. Weird excuses. The same names keep coming up. Always with him." We sat in silence for a moment, just letting the weight of it settle between us. "I checked the Uber receipts," Rachel whispered. "Same drop-offs. Same hours." "I've been logging everything," I said quietly. I stopped asking questions. I started watching. She finally looked at me. "You're not crazy, Brian." Something in me cracked at those words. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear them. "You're not either," I said. "You're just the only other person who's seeing what's really going on." She gave a weak smile. Felt like I was losing my mind. We sat for an hour, maybe more, piecing together our timelines like detectives in a noir film. Chad's work trips that lined up with Melissa's offsites. Her late meetings that coincided with his gym nights. Rachel even had screenshots of dual hotel reservations made within minutes of each other. And the whole time we spoke, I felt something unexpected building, not attraction. Not yet, but recognition. Here was someone who knew exactly how hollow it felt to smile through suspicion. Someone who'd stayed up at night staring at a bedroom ceiling, wondering if love was supposed to hurt this quietly. She reached for my hand at one point, not dramatically, just a light touch across the table. A human gesture in the middle of something inhuman. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this," she said softly. I squeezed her fingers gently. "We start with the truth." The streetlights blinked on outside, painting the window with golden stripes. Inside, two strangers sat across from each other with broken pieces, and the quiet understanding that maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone in the wreckage. After that first cafe meeting, something shifted. Rachel and I never discussed a plan, not formally, not out loud. But the next morning, there was a text on my phone at 7:03 a.m. "Check Chad's travel receipts for last Tuesday. I'll send Melissa's office schedule." From there, it became routine. A message here, a photo there. Always discreet. Always quiet. Two people building a case, not just against the ones they loved, but against the illusion they'd been living in. We met again the following Thursday, this time at a bookstore, tucked between shelves labeled memoirs and unfinished business. Fitting. Rachel arrived in a denim jacket and ball cap. She handed me a manila envelope like we were passing classified documents. Inside, a copy of Chad's calendar printout, a restaurant receipt, a Lyft trip that dropped him at a hotel in Midtown at the exact same time Melissa's Outlook showed her evening client meeting. I slid over a printed page of Melissa's shared work chat, a message she'd left in a rush. "Gotta run. Dinner with him again." Oh, grimacing face. Rachel read it, blinked, and pressed her lips together to keep them from shaking. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, too quickly. "Yeah, I guess part of me was still hoping we were wrong." I didn't say anything, because I had stopped hoping. What I wanted now wasn't clarity, it was precision. We kept meeting. Sometimes at the back of a tea shop where the owner never looked twice at us. Sometimes in the park, on separate benches like spies in a bad romance novel. With every conversation, every screen capture, every hotel bill with familiar names, something started to take root. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was safety. It was shared sorrow without judgment. It was the comfort of someone who wouldn't rush your sadness or try to fix what wasn't theirs to fix. One evening, in the back of a quiet library study room, Rachel reached over and touched my hand again. A simple, human gesture. Her thumb grazed the side of mine slowly. Not seduction. Just grounding. "I don't know how you stay so calm," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm not calm," I whispered. "I'm just finished yelling at people who aren't listening." She smiled, soft and sad. "That's exactly it. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross lines." But when I stood to leave, she rested her head lightly against my shoulder for a second longer than she should have. And I didn't move. Because in a world where the people closest to us had lied with straight faces, this quiet, wordless understanding felt more honest than anything else. Melissa was never good with silence. In the early years of our marriage, she'd fill every quiet stretch with humming, questions, stories I didn't even have to respond to. She once told me that silence made her feel like something was wrong, like the air was holding its breath. So when I stopped reacting, she noticed. Not right away, but slowly, like how you notice a bruise blooming under your skin long after you've bumped into something. It started with small things. She'd ask, "You okay?" and I'd nod without looking up. She'd walk into the living room after a late meeting, and I wouldn't even glance from my book. Just flip the page. There was no sarcasm, no shouting, no passive-aggressive digs, just absence. And Melissa? She couldn't take it. One night, she tossed her bag onto the kitchen island harder than necessary and snapped. "Are you going to keep acting like I'm not here?" I looked up from my laptop. Calm. Even. I didn't realize I needed to act. Her jaw tightened. Wow. She waited for me to say something more. A follow-up. A fight. Anything. But I just went back to typing. The next morning, she tried again. Came downstairs wearing one of those satin robes she used to reserve for vacations and anniversaries. Her voice was soft, sultry, like she thought the right tone could rewind whatever this was. "You want coffee?" she asked, running a hand through her hair. "I already made some," I said, walking past her without meeting her eyes. That's when I heard her mutter it, quiet but pointed. "You've changed." I paused at the doorway. "So have you." The tension only grew from there. She accused me of being paranoid, cold, petty. I didn't disagree. I didn't defend myself either. I just let her words fall into the silence between us and stay there, unanswered. It drove her crazy. Later that week, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You're being ridiculous," she said, trying to laugh, but her voice cracked halfway through. All this over a hug at a work party? I leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Is that what you think this is about?" She blinked. "Isn't it?" "No," I said simply. "It's about what came after. The lies. The avoidance. The gaslighting." Melissa's face twisted. "Gaslighting? Are you serious?" "You're the one who's been disappearing 3 nights a week," I replied. "And I stopped asking where you were when I realized you stopped caring if I believed you." She looked at me then, not angry, not smug, just uncertain. It was the first real crack I'd seen in weeks. "You really think I'm cheating on you?" she asked, quieter now. I didn't answer, because we were past the point where words meant anything. Melissa stepped closer. "Brian, look at me." I did, and for the first time, I saw it. Not defiance, not superiority, but fear. Not of losing me, but of losing control. That's what this had always been about. She wanted me confused, uncertain, pacing the house with questions while she held all the answers. But now, she was the one pacing. I poured myself a glass of water and walked away, leaving her standing there in the middle of our picture-perfect kitchen, a place that used to feel like ours, now nothing more than a backdrop to something broken. And I could feel it in her silence that night. She wasn't scared I'd leave. She was scared I already had. Rachel invited me over on a Wednesday. No hidden agenda. No late-night timing or suggestive texts. Just a simple message. "Can we go over timelines again?" I found something. I almost didn't go. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure I could keep pretending that this connection between us was still just tactical. Still clean. But I showed up. Her apartment was warmer than I expected. String lights across the balcony window. A faint smell of lavender. She handed me a glass of Cabernet and a stack of printouts like we were reviewing some court case. Which, in a way, we were. Chad booked a weekend conference, she said, sliding a paper toward me. Except the hotel confirmation shows he added a guest. 2 beds initially. Then he changed it to 1. I didn't react right away, just stared at the page, letting the familiar numbness spread. Rachel leaned against the kitchen island, sipping her wine, her eyes on me more than the paper. They've been doing this longer than we thought, she said, voice quieter now. I nodded. They're careful, but not careful enough. She smiled faintly. Guess betrayal makes you sloppy eventually. I met her eyes. Or maybe they just stopped worrying about getting caught. The room went quiet. Outside, wind rustled the trees against her window. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed faintly before disappearing. But inside, all I could hear was the faint clink of her glass as she set it down. She moved closer. Not in some movie-style, slow-motion seduction. Just naturally. She stepped into the space between us like it had always belonged to her. You ever wonder, she said softly, if we would have met like this even if none of this happened? I didn't answer right away. Because yes, I had wondered. And the truth is, it scared me how easy we'd become. Rachel wasn't just someone I related to. She saw me, not as Melissa's husband, not as Chad's rival, but as someone who'd been burned and didn't know how to talk about the ash still clinging to his lungs. She stepped closer still, and when she touched my face, her palm resting against my cheek like it had every right to be there, I didn't move. I think about it all the time, she whispered. Her thumb brushed the edge of my jaw. I closed my eyes, not to lean into it, but to stop the room from spinning. I'm not trying to replace her, she said, almost apologetically. I opened my eyes. You couldn't if you tried. Her face fell slightly, but I reached for her hand, held it between mine. Not possessively, just deliberately. I mean that in the best way, I said. You're not a replacement. You're the first real thing I've felt in a long time. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with something unspoken. And then, slowly, she leaned forward. Our lips met, not hungry, not rushed, just quiet, honest. A touch that didn't need fireworks to feel real. The kiss didn't last long. Neither of us pushed for more. We didn't collapse into each other or tumble into the bedroom. Instead, we sat on her couch, side by side, her head resting lightly on my shoulder as we watched the city lights flicker across her living room wall. No words, no expectations, just 2 people, sitting with the weight of what they'd lost, and the quiet hope of whatever might come next. Melissa left for her business trip Friday night. At least, that's what she called it. Black suitcase, freshly done nails, a perfume I hadn't smelled on her in months. Not the usual scent she wore to conferences, but something newer, sweeter, more deliberate. She barely looked at me as she grabbed her keys. I'll be back Sunday, she said, standing by the door, her tone breezy, practiced. Try not to burn the house down. I didn't say a word. Didn't ask what city she was flying to. Didn't fake concern. Just nodded and watched as she rolled her suitcase down the walkway like she was headed toward freedom. She didn't kiss me goodbye. I didn't offer one. The door clicked shut, and with it, the last illusion of marriage left our home. The silence that followed was sharp. Not peaceful, but purposeful. Like the house itself had finally exhaled. I poured a glass of bourbon, leaned on the kitchen counter, and stared at nothing. And then the knock came. 3 soft raps. Measured. Familiar. I opened the door to Rachel, wrapped in a gray coat, her cheeks pink from the chill. She held up a bottle of wine. The good kind, not the cheap supermarket stuff. She's gone? She asked, stepping inside. I nodded. About 15 minutes ago. Rachel exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath all day. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said, setting the bottle on the counter. But I found something. And I didn't want to sit with it alone. She pulled out a folded email printout from her coat pocket. It was from Chad's company account. Someone had forwarded it to her anonymously. They're under review, she said. A financial audit starting next quarter. And apparently, certain executives, including Chad and Melissa, are being flagged for inappropriate travel reimbursements. I raised an eyebrow. Hotel expenses. Dinners marked as client meetings. Flights billed twice. If it sticks, they'll both be in trouble. Quiet trouble. The kind of firing that doesn't make headlines, but destroys resumes. I leaned back against the counter, letting that sink in. This could be it, I said. Poetic justice. Rachel poured us both a glass of the Cabernet. We clinked them gently. No toasts. Just understanding. We moved to the couch. At first, we talked. Timelines, fallout, the quiet satisfaction of watching a structure built on lies finally begin to crack. But eventually, the words stopped matching. Rachel leaned into me, her hand resting on my chest like she was checking to see if I still had a heartbeat. And I did. I hadn't realized how long I'd been living half asleep until she touched me like that. Careful, slow, present. I cupped her face, traced my thumb across the hollow beneath her cheekbone. Her eyes didn't ask for permission, they gave it. When our lips met again, it wasn't tentative this time. It was full, certain. Clothes didn't come off in a frenzy. It wasn't about escaping anything. It was about arriving into something honest, something earned. We moved slowly, deliberately. When we finally lay tangled in sheets, bodies close, the night no longer felt cold. And for once, nothing needed explaining. The room felt different now, not like a secret, like a beginning. The ballroom felt colder than it should have. Chandeliers sparkled like polished lies overhead. Waiters glided between tables with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres too delicate to pronounce. The corporate winter banquet was exactly what I expected, gilded nonsense. But tonight, the air buzzed differently. Because tonight, masks were going to fall. I stood near the back, blending in with the shadows, sipping club soda. Not because I was trying to stay sober. I just wanted my head clear for what was coming. Rachel stood beside me, calm and composed in a crimson dress that turned every head, especially his. Chad, across the room, cocky as ever, leaning against the bar, basking in his own false confidence, surrounded by people who still believed the hype. Melissa wasn't far from him. She wore black satin, her hair pinned into some elegant twist. She was laughing at something someone said, but it didn't reach her eyes. She hadn't looked for me once since we arrived. They were both still performing, still pretending. I'd let them. Until now. Rachel reached over and gently adjusted my collar. You ready? I nodded. Let's give them something they'll remember. And then, right on cue, Chad noticed me. His grin widened as he swaggered across the room, glass in hand, the clink of ice punctuating each step like a drum roll. He didn't even glance at Rachel, just locked onto me. Didn't think you'd show, Brian, he said, loud enough for nearby conversations to pause. That's brave. Or stupid. Hard to tell these days. I smiled calm. I figured someone should keep the entertainment honest. He leaned in closer, like he was sharing a secret. For what it's worth, your wife could do better. I didn't blink. Funny, I said, my voice even, sharp. Your wife didn't complain when we were in your bed. Silence. Not the kind that asks for a follow-up. The kind that explodes inside a room like a dropped match in a dry forest. All around us, heads turned. Someone gasped. A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the floor. Melissa turned slowly from across the ballroom, her face freezing mid-laugh. And then Rachel stepped forward. She didn't complain, she said, her voice louder than mine, clear and cutting. She thanked him. After the second time. Chad's face twisted, stunned into stillness. Rachel reached into her clutch and pulled out a manila envelope. This is a formal ethics violation report. Itemized expenses. Hotel bills. Dinner receipts. 2 executive names. Fraudulent claims. She handed it to the company's HR director, who had just stepped over, blinking like he wasn't sure if he was part of some elaborate prank. You might want to start with the Cancun trip, she added. That one was bold. Melissa pushed through the crowd, her voice tight. Rachel, this is a mistake. No, I said, stepping forward. The mistake was thinking none of this would catch up with you. Chad opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. His mouth moved. No words. Rachel gave one last look at him. Not angry, not triumphant. Just done. And then she turned to leave. Melissa grabbed my wrist. Brian, please. Don't do this here. I looked down at her hand, then up into her eyes. I'm not doing anything. I'm just done pretending. She flinched, like that hurt more than a slap. And then it unraveled. Chad turned on Melissa, voice rising. You told me nobody would find out. You said HR wouldn't care. You were supposed to handle this. They started shouting, arms flying. Words like liar, stupid, desperate, slung like knives. And then Melissa slapped him. Hard. He shoved her back. Security rushed in, guests screamed. Phones shot up like concert lighters. The ballroom dissolved into chaos. Rachel and I didn't wait to see how it ended. We walked out as voices clashed behind us. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. Let them tear each other apart in front of the people they tried so hard to impress. Outside, the city night felt wide and open. I could breathe again. Rachel slid her arm into mine. "That went better than expected," she said, a quiet smirk curling at the edges of her voice. I exhaled. It went exactly as it should have. And as we stepped into the silence of the valet lane, I realized something. Justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it just walks out quietly, shoulder to shoulder with someone who never needed to lie to you. A week after the banquet, the statement went out quietly. No press. No email blast. Just a notice buried at the bottom of the internal HR bulletin. Melissa R. and Chad L. are no longer employed with the company. We wish them the best in their future endeavors. No one said the words fired, ethics breach, or financial audit. But everyone knew. Whispers traveled faster than emails. By noon, the office coffee machine had become a confessional. People spoke in hushed tones, pretending to care about professionalism while refreshing their group chats for updates. I didn't need gossip. I already had the only confirmation I wanted: silence. No more late meetings. No suitcase at the door. No fake laughter in the hallways. Melissa was gone. That Sunday, I sat across from Rachel at the same bookstore cafe where all this had started. This time, no spreadsheets. No timelines. Just two people surrounded by shelves of stories, finally closing one of their own. "Our lawyers filed the paperwork yesterday," I said. Rachel nodded. "Mine too. It's almost anticlimactic, right?" I smirked. "We wanted the truth. We got it." She looked down into her cup. "And we still have each other." I didn't respond, not because I didn't agree, but because it was the first time someone had said it out loud. And the truth of it felt heavier than I expected. Rachel reached for my hand. I let her take it. The funny thing about starting over is that it rarely looks how you imagined. It's not triumphant, not cinematic. It's quiet, simple. You just start choosing differently, and one day, you notice it's no longer hard. That night, back at my house, I found Melissa's name flashing on my phone screen. She'd tried 3 times in the last week. No voicemails, no texts, just that same call, always around 9:30 p.m. Like some part of her still expected to be let in out of habit. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Then I blocked the number. The next morning, a letter came, handwritten, thick with effort. Melissa's handwriting had always been sharp and controlled. But this? Slanted, frantic, overcorrected. Every line dripped with emotional gymnastics. I made a mistake. We were lost, and I didn't know how to fix us. What we had was real, wasn't it? You don't just stop loving someone overnight. She never once said I'm sorry. I folded the letter neatly and slid it into a drawer I never opened anymore. Not out of bitterness, but because it didn't matter. Love isn't something you chase down like a lost pet. It's something you protect. And once it breaks, really breaks, what comes back isn't love. It's memory. And memories don't get second chances. I stepped outside into the backyard. The air was cool, quiet, still. No lies. No suspicion. Just breeze and grass and the smell of someone grilling 2 houses down. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. "You free for dinner? I miss your laugh." I smiled. Not because I felt healed, but because for once, I wasn't hurting. The backyard smelled like grilled ribs and charcoal. It was a small get-together, 6 people, tops. Just friends from the consultancy, a couple of neighbors I'd grown to trust again. Nothing fancy. Folding chairs, a cooler full of beer, laughter that didn't feel forced. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for something to go wrong. I flipped burgers while the guys debated football stats. The kids next door ran through sprinklers, their shrieks mixing with the soft hum of an old stereo playing classic rock. Every so often, someone would nudge me and say, "You okay, man?" And I'd just nod. Because I was. Rachel sat on the patio, legs tucked under her, wine glass in hand. She brought a pasta salad that somehow vanished before I even got a second scoop. She looked up and caught my eye, mouthing, "You good?" I gave her a mock salute. She grinned. It still surprised me sometimes, how normal this all felt. Not because it wasn't hard-won, but because I'd forgotten that peace could be simple. That laughter didn't have to be scanned for subtext. That being alone with someone could feel safe instead of staged. Later, as the sun dipped behind the neighbor's fence, someone asked how my winter banquet went. The room fell quiet for a second. I cracked a beer and leaned back in my chair. "Best party I never got invited to," I said. They laughed, half confused, half curious. Rachel chuckled into her glass and added, "Didn't know Chad was so delicate under pressure." The group burst out laughing. One guy clapped the table. "Man, I still can't believe that story. I'd have paid to see that slap." I shrugged. Turns out, betrayal has a pretty high entertainment value if you live through it. The moment passed, the music picked up again, and just like that, the party moved on. But I didn't. Not in a stuck way, just in a reflective one. I stood near the fence, drink in hand, watching the sky shift from orange to lavender to black. The stars poked through one by one, stubborn and soft. And I thought about everything that had happened. The rooftop party. That sick feeling in my chest when I saw Melissa with him. The nights alone, scribbling down her lies in the dark like I was the one cheating time. The first time Rachel and I locked eyes across that cafe table, knowing without saying it that we were both drowning in the same sea. And then, the quiet, the calm, the fact that justice didn't come with fireworks, just a clean slate, a block number, and a woman whose hand felt right in mine without needing to explain why. Melissa was gone. Chad was gone. The drama had burned out like a wildfire with nothing left to consume. And I was still here. Not bitter. Not broken. Just better. I tipped my bottle toward the night sky like a toast. To what we lose, I said under my breath. And what we gain when we stop chasing what never loved us back. From the patio, Rachel called out, "You coming back, or are you going to brood under the moon all night?" I smiled. Then I turned, not toward the past, but toward the people still laughing around the table. And I walked forward.